What's going on, world? Welcome to another edition of the Black Mental Health Podcast. I'm your host, Reg. Today with me is a very special guest. I told everybody I got to come up with a different name because I call every guest a very special guest. But for family and people that I care about, and I don't say I care about all my guests, but the people, loved ones in my life that are there with me mostly on a day-to-day basis, I got to come up with a different name. But without further ado, I just put it out on Instagram and social media that we are engaged, or we are finally going to tie the knot next year on July 15th, 2021. I have my fiance, Miss Alissa Rhodes, soon to be Howard.
Right. There we go. Hey, y'all.
So I wanted to bring her on because we made the announcement, and we've been together 10 years now. Well, it'll be 10 years next year. But it felt like 10 years. It felt like 20, actually.
Right. For a minute.
So I wanted to bring her on. Not only, so she was on back in December. Yeah, it was in December, and we talked about my car accident. So we'll touch more on that a little bit later. But if y'all want to get like a glimpse of some of the story and hear some stuff that may not be shared today, y'all can go check out that episode. But today I just wanted to kind of chronicleize, I don't even know if that's the word, chronicleize, whatever the word is. I want to put a timeline
yes.
of how we came from the road to Howard, which will be in 2020, well, stop in 2021. And so I wanted to start from the early beginnings. And one of the recent episodes I had that you seen was with my stepdad. And you talked about on the last episode that you were on about how the factor of your father not being there and how it's playing an effect on you today. What I wanted to answer today was that you have a Caucasian stepfather, and I know he supports the podcast because he shares a lot. Shout out to Dave. But how has that played a part in your life? And as far as him being a stepfather, his role as a stepfather, but even in the times that we're in now, how just the impact of having a Caucasian white stepfather and how it played a part in your life.
Well, obviously there's a disconnect because he's not me and I am not him. And then on top of the disconnect, you're white. So there are a lot of things that I feel like we go through culturally. And when I say me, I mean me and my mother go through culturally that he may not understand. And so I was told that in the beginning when he first came around, because I think he came around probably when I was about 5 or maybe a little bit younger than that. And I was like in awe of him. Like I used to like want to go everywhere with him, hold his hand and all of that stuff. It wasn't until I went to grade school where I started to get teased, like where, you know, we would have the conversation about our dads. He would come and pick me up and they like, oh, that's not your dad, girl. He white. In grade school. So we talking about from elementary to 5th. And so once like that picture was painted, I was like, oh, well,
maybe I should start caring about
him. Like, and so then as I started to grow up, it just was like we didn't have any similarities, like none whatsoever. Like we never share any intimate conversations. Like we don't talk. Like honestly, like that's just what it is. We don't talk. I feel like he was a provider, and you know, he definitely opened my mom's eyes and my eyes to new experiences. I remember being out to dinner all the time. Like we stayed at restaurants, just always trying different foods. But as far as like getting deep, it never was what it was. And so later down the line, like maybe like till this moment, like, you know, we're cordial, it's hi and bye, but we really don't have any type of chemistry. Honestly.
Yeah, and to her point, we met in 2011. So a quick timeline: we went to the same middle school in about 2004. We never spoke to each other, so we went to the same middle school in 8th grade. Graduated, went to different high schools, and met each other after high school at Shippensburg University in 2009, and we've been together since 2011. And so it wasn't until I got in a relationship with her I started to see the different culture differences between the Black community and somewhat in the white community, because we actually, and we don't have to go too far into detail, we had an incident where he did something with my son that I didn't like. And one can say like he could be almost charged for it, but because I understand, if it was my dad or her biological father, it probably wouldn't have had no problem with what the incident was. But because he was from a different community, because he was white, it almost made us look at it in a different viewpoint.
Right, like definitely not okay. Like I don't think that, I mean, he obviously knew there were boundaries. Like I said, we don't really have a connection. So he knew that there were certain things that he could do and say to me, not being his daughter. I mean, don't get me wrong, throughout life, it's trial and error. So there has been a few instances rather where he kind of like crossed the line and he had to get checked. And it was like, well, you can't do that. But for the most part, he played his part as stepdad. Like whatever your mother says that she needs for you, I'll be able to provide that for you. But other than that, we'll just leave it where it is. But yeah, in regards to the incident with my child, I was upset about it, but what really got me was the fact that my mother thought that that was okay. So it's like, you all know that we're coming from these different backgrounds and that, he's not biologically tied. So why would you think that that was acceptable? So I couldn't really get mad at him because coming from the biological grandmother's aspect, she allowed it to happen. So at this point, I can't even curse you out, sir.
Right. No, that's true. That is so true. But yeah, no, it's the truth, and we still haven't discussed that. It's kind of one of those things we kind of like swept under the rug. So if y'all see this, her mom and stepfather, we're open to the conversation, because I know everybody, trust me, family is listening now to the podcast. So I have to tread a lot lightly on some of the subjects that I talk about and make sure I'm being respectful of people's opinions and perspectives. But speaking of our oldest son Zion, he recently did an interview on the podcast. How do you feel about it?
I love my baby. He is so cute. But I just love the way that interview happened because he was so open, especially like you said, with everything going on in the world right now, as far as like the Black lives and all lives. Like my baby, he doesn't know any difference really. And a lot of that was due to him having a Caucasian stepfather. And as far as he knows, that's his grandpa. And I won't tell him no different, regardless of my feelings towards him. So that's his grandfather. And so when he says all lives matter, I adore it because he doesn't see black or white, or he doesn't see, the racism that we may be experiencing or are experiencing. And I just think that that's like, as parents, we're doing an amazing job with him.
Yeah, and it sparked the idea because all lives matter becomes an offensive term when you forget about the Black lives within it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted him to know, like, he genuinely feels that all lives matter, and I want him to know why people are saying Black lives matter. So he's been learning a lot about slavery, Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, like
but
having.
I know how he operates. Like he's a baby you. And so I don't want him to be in or out. And so when we start to teach him about the Harriets and the
gonna go
slavery,
right out the window.
like my baby gonna be empowered to the people, Black Panther, like I ain't trying to hear nothing. And so I try to tread, because as much as I want my honey to know about his history, I still want him to be respectful, and I don't want him to exclude anybody, because what we try to teach him is you respect who respects you. And once that line is crossed, then we'll deal with it, in a different way. But I don't want him approaching situations where it's like, oh, you're right, you're wrong. And no.
Yeah, and that's one of the benefits, I'll say, of you having a white stepfather, is the fact that we can use him as an example of not all of them are bad, or not all cops are bad. We can have that conversation like, look, doesn't grandpa does this for you? Doesn't papa do this for you?
He loves my sons dearly.
Mm-hmm. And he's always tried his best to provide and give him a lot. Like I will always salute him for it. So even with that incident we spoke of earlier, I gave him the benefit of the doubt because I don't think his intentions was bad. If I thought his intentions were bad, y'all wouldn't need. It'll be a whole different conversation right now.
Pretty much.
And so the benefit of him having a white grandfather is the fact that he can have a basis of reference. So when he's thinking about being a power to the people, he knows that might be offensive to his grandfather. And so it's like, no, I got to include my Black life as well as all lives within it.
Right.
And so growing up, even going into college, when we started meeting,
when we met,
when we met and we had conversations, she'll tell more of that story, but whatever she feels comfortable with. I learned a lot about how drinking is a coping mechanism for life struggles and problems. So you can take it away, whatever you feel like sharing.
Um, yeah, so it's I don't even really know where to go. Like I just feel like alcoholism is definitely an issue in my family. And I don't really, especially because family members are listening to this podcast, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but it definitely held an effect on me. And so growing up, I associated, oh, when you're stressed, drink, or when you're feeling some type of way, drink. You're feeling insecure, drink. Like anything that was in relation to my feelings and how I was feeling emotionally is go ahead and drink. And so in school, I kind of like went OD. Like I did way too much. And it was one of those, like I literally drunk until I felt the alcohol. And usually that was a little bit too late. So I done had myself in situations where I done embarrassed myself. I done chipped a tooth. I done lost friends. Like I done went through a lot. And it was all due to just my upbringing. Like anything in regards to, I guess what would be considered drama or trauma is like you drink, and that's what I did. I don't really like talking about it because I feel like it took so much of my life from me. And so I kind of like when you that's the reason why you don't really see me. Like I don't post on social media like that. I don't go out like that. Like I'm still like internally dealing with the alcoholism that I experienced 10 years ago in college, but it's just because I'm so embarrassed at my actions and how I portrayed myself during that time, because I know that I was like better than that. Like now, especially with Reggie being in the mental health field, I've realized that there were other ways to handle that. And so now I just try to, be low key and just relax.
No, that's true. And I was looking up the definition because I always try to educate now. Before, when I first started this podcast, y'all heard the last one with my friends. A lot of that I was just shooting from the hip. And now, because I've gotten a little bit more education, being with Black Men Hill, being with Anami, being with these different organizations and getting these trainings, I'm able to provide information, not only share therapeutic story, but provide informational solutions. So when I Google Dr. Google, again, Google just giving us a basis for the conversation. Alcoholism, for one, what made me pay more attention to her story and her situation was the fact of when I looked up alcoholism, it said it was a mental illness. That blew my mind. Like it blew my mind that I've been talking about mental health for maybe about 3 years now, and alcoholism falls under that realm. I always thought of alcoholism as
it's just something you associate with the Black community, but it really is a coping mechanism to whatever it is that you're coping
and
with. Alcohol with.
My friend Anthony Walker, if y'all ever look back on his episode, he's gonna be up here soon. I just gotta find the time because I want to give an update on his story. But he was on an earlier podcast. He gave me advice. He's married, and he was giving me advice on me and Lisa was struggling with something, and he was telling me like, you got to look at some of the things as an illness and not just her being like a effed up person. And so once he put that scope and realm over me, I started to do some more research about alcoholism because he just named it as an illness. But when I got the definition of alcoholism as an addiction to the consumption of alcoholic liquor or the mental illness and compulsive behavior resulting from alcohol dependency. And again, I'm not a therapist or a psychiatrist, so I can't diagnose her. But she is already now currently seeking out a therapist and trying to find a provider because she even believes like she may fall somewhere along that spectrum. And even when it goes to alcoholism, is when one can no longer control their use of alcohol, compulsively abuse alcohol despite its negative ramifications. She just talked about chip tooth and just going dark and drinking until she feel it. And then last part of that definition is and or experience emotional distress when they are not drinking. And so when I looked that definition up and knowing my partner and who I've been with, it was like, man, like now I'm more receptive of her perspective and trying to understand it as opposed to like, oh no, you're just being an asshole right now. And so again, not diagnosing, but when she ever does find the right therapist and find the right provider, I think that's something that she will probably discuss in the future with them.
Yeah, I'm sure. Like, I just know that, again, because of my upbringing and just associating drinking with whatever I'm dealing with, like, my dad not really being there, not being close to my stepfather, me and my mom, we're cool, but it's along the lines of just like surface level. Like, we don't get deep. We don't really talk about, really like who I am and how I was like, she's trying to come around. But again, it's like, let me get toasty real quick. Let me have a couple of beers first, and then I'll be able to. And it's like, why do you have to do all that? Because at the end of the day, you're still my mother, and it's still an example that you need to set. So now moving forward in our relationship, it's like, all right, well, when we have to talk about some deep shit, let me go have a drink first to just ease it and, you know, get right. And that's not an example that I want to pass down to my son, or my sons rather. So, you know, it's still like a work in progress. So I don't really talk about, you know, my relationship with alcohol too much. It's gotten better. No more chip teeth. You know, like no more drinking and you know, doing stupid stuff or passing out and falling out. But there's definitely still some things that I need to work out.
And I know that was a big part of like self-identity. Like a lot of the stuff was trying to find out who you are and what about yourself. And mind you, I'll be as transparent and say I played a part in that because I was degrading, because I was just looking at the alcoholism, like you just worthless because all you want to do is drink and all of these things of like what I'm thinking is going to be almost tough love to make her want it. It almost was like, no,
you're breaking me down.
Yeah, you're making it worse.
Exactly.
And I had to, you know, learn and grow into that. Again, going back to this being a mental health platform, it's because we're not educated about some of these things within the community. And because I'm waiting for the day where she says, yeah, it's all go, bro. We can start talking more about alcoholism. I'm in a comfortable space because I feel like that's a big part of why liquor stores on every corner and all of that stuff that goes in it, because I think that's really like one of the main coping mechanisms in our community because we're not educated enough.
Which is why you didn't even realize that it was a mental illness to begin with, because it's so common.
Mm-hmm.
Like what I'm saying, most people are going through, especially like in our community. So that's why it was so easy for him to come at me and just, you know, you this and you that. And it's like, bro, like I'm really dealing with some shit that I can't, you know, I can handle. I just don't know how right now. So support me.
No, and I learned that too. And what stopped me, because I drunk in college too. I was drinking. But again, y'all heard the last podcast. We were the Bacardi boys. And so not only were we providing the drinks, we were drinking too. And so what stopped me or had a guard for me was I grew up, and I won't put the family out there, but I grew up around a family that all they did was drink, that turned into fighting, crying, just all over. And they wake up, they need a beer. They wake up, they going to drink. And I'm like, I see what the outcome is. And so all I seen with her was the outcome of like chip tooth or being lost. Like she's been in some crazy predicaments where you can tell God has an angel over her 100%. Because like just she don't even know how she got home. You know what I mean? And so and I guess for me seeing those, mind you, I've known her since, because you would say you started drinking since college. That was when it really started, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I've known her since she started drinking, and I've seen, like, mind you, I heard the stories. Like, she was coming to my parties and basically couldn't like function during them. You know what I mean? Sleep in the corner somewhere. And so
passed out on balconies. Like it was bad. Like, and I know the term like white girl wasted, but it got to a point where this is ridiculous now. Like at the end of the day, like it was like an expectation of my friends. Like, all right, well, I ain't being nobody mom tonight. Like I had to get a pep talk prior to us going out, and it was like, how embarrassing is that? Like I look back on those moments and it almost makes me want to cry, because it's like, girl, you lack so much self-control that you just like you had to get a pep talk prior to going out. And I'm talking about like every party. It wasn't until like the last time I had one up there, I think we went up there together. I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna stay in a room. Yep. It wasn't even no point of me going up there because like she
was trying to get rid of that stain of the memory that she left the last time she was up there.
Yeah.
And that's honestly, if anybody from Shippensburg like listening to this podcast now, that's honestly why she doesn't want to really communicate. It's not the fact that she doesn't want to be in a relationship. It's because she knows all of the history that's attached to Shippensburg University and her relationship out there.
It's kind of along the lines of you only get one time or one chance to make a first impression. And I feel like my first impression was it wasn't the best. Like, it wasn't good. And so I kind of just, keep relationships from Shippensburg kind of like surface level. And I more so would prefer to move forward with like new people who don't know me and can't judge me. And now moving forward is like, oh, you're a good mom, or, you've been in your relationship for 10 plus years on the road to getting married, or, you're working and you're in school, like all of these, the good things. And like, let's move forward on that positive note, because when we're around, like even sometimes when we're around your friends and, you bring up like, no, because, Lisa get down, or, no, you only get one shot. And that's like recently. And it's like to keep having those things present itself when I'm already uncomfortable. I would just rather like.
No, and I understand why she say that, because, and again, to her credit, like I recently still say that, but that's because I know that's not who she is anymore. But again, it's still a touchy spot for her. And so sometimes I'm only dealing with who she is now, the good, phenomenal mom, the phenomenal relationship person, the person who go to school, the person who work. So we can talk about stuff you used to be, because you're not that anymore, but it's still something like, that's still a Band-Aid that I ain't want to rip off yet too much.
Like, I'm still uncomfortable. And I deal with it. And I'm still dealing with it because, again, it stemmed from my family as an example. And it's not like, they stopped drinking or, they stopped doing those things. So it's still, I just don't want to associate anything with like alcohol.
Nah.
But I still drink. Like, I switched over to wine. I'm off the hard stuff.
Nah, and that was, speaking of all of that, and a lot of that transition happened when we had our first son, where I used to ask her, like, why do we got to drink all the time to spend time with each other? And I think that made an impact on her. But I know once she became a mother, she started to take more seriously her self-identity, because it's like, what kind of mom do I want to be? Before she even figured out herself, and mind you, I don't want to speak for her, but before she even figured out what she wanted to be, it was like, what kind of mom I want to be. I can work on me later, but what kind of mother do I want to be? And so I guess you could talk more about that and how becoming a mother transition.
Definitely. Like, I value children. Like, I'm actually in the field of, I'm going to school to be a teacher. And so, and I work at the school district now. So I'm just all wrapped around children. And when I found out that I was being a mom, I'm like, oh, all this has to stop, because what type of example do I want to set for him? Because I'm going to set that precedent for his wife or his girlfriends. You know what I mean? So I'm just like, I can't be doing this. So even with arguments and stuff, like, I try to do like a complete 360 as far as like
180.
180.
Yeah. 360 will get you right back
to where I started, a whole 180. So that way I could be like a good example for Zion.
Yeah, and the reason why I bring that up, because that's also when I had my transition, because I was dealing with a lot. Everybody can hear my story throughout these podcasts, but that's where I made one of my transitions of like, man, I'm becoming a father. A lot of them Bacardi boy ways, a lot of those ways that I used to have, with it got to go down, it got to go away. But again, this is why I have this platform. I don't have the tools to transition into becoming that person. And so it led me to multiple suicide attempts, where I found myself on a bridge, or I started taking all these pills, and then my godmother had to come and watch me. And then that's how I got to learning about mental health. I would guess to take your perspective, or I would like to hear your perspective on getting the text message of like, take care of my son, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't even know if I sent that one to you, but you were around during that time of just your whole opinion on that.
I just know, like, early on, we were going through a lot. Like, so you were talking about like the transition of you becoming a father and you not having the necessary tools. It was the same for me. And so I think trying to come in together, it just was extremely stressful, because now we're trying to have these two different personalities come together to raise this child. And so I know back then, like during those times, it just was really, really hard, because we kept like arguing, and what you was doing wasn't right and what I was doing wasn't right. And it just ultimately was just too much. So I don't remember you giving me a text message of like.
Actually, you was there. Remember? Actually, you came. You remember? That was one of the times you drove up and you drove back, and then Dre was like, nah, you causing the problem. Like, go home. It was him and Nadir outside. And I was on that bridge, and you came up, to her point, she came up pregnant and all, but it was like she was a part of the stressor. So before we get to that part, on a lighter note, talk about my reaction to finding out you was pregnant.
Oh, like the whole pregnancy story. Yeah. So, I don't know what, like, obviously as women, we know our bodies. So I go and buy a pregnancy test and it ended up positive. So I'm like, oh shit. And so I think you were talking to your mom and y'all busting it up, having a conversation. And I'm all like, I'm nervous because I know what the results are. And so now I got to tell this fool. So now I'm like, Reggie, come here. And finally he like, what? So I show him the pregnancy test and it just like blinked.
No, before that, I was like, what is negative?
Don't even know how to read it. Like, but then we get through past that, like establish that it is a positive pregnancy test. And then he just went silent. Like, mind you, he was busting it up with his mom, having a whole conversation, laughing, you know, just the whole nine. And then he get the results of me being pregnant and go blank. And so, you know, I come up with the excuse like, well, it was one of them little cheap ones from the dollar store. Let's go to like Walgreens or Rite Aid to go get like a first response. You know, we're going to get a brand that we trust. So we go and get it. Maybe like no more than 20 to 30 minutes later, I take it again and that plus sign pop up. But even going to the Rite Aid, he said nothing. Like, and I'm like, come on, like I'm already nervous. Like, I need you to talk. And he just like what? Like he just was at a loss for words.
Go ahead. Now I was gonna say I was processing everything.
Yeah, and so we get back, we take it, plus sign come back up again, and I can't remember like what happened after that.
When my mom went away, I don't even think we finished it.
I don't even want to talk no more.
I don't think some life stuff is happening right now, and I gotta figure it out.
It just got
real fast. And so I was processing it all, and I think I took that processing to that bridge into our relationship where we was fighting back and forth. Your family wanted one thing from me, I wanted one thing from you, and it was just so many things. And to that point where I didn't even go to the first baby shower because it was a lot, and I felt like it
just was so much pressure, like the expectation of a new baby, and you know, we're 19, 20 years old, you know, so we're still kids ourselves, and you know, his people want this way and my people want it this way, and nobody's really listening to us, but because we're so young and we barely know what the hell we're doing, we're taking in consideration everybody's just opinion of what we need to do. And it just ended up being so stressful because I remember saying, I'm not raising my kids in nobody else's house. We're 19, 20 years old. Like we got like retail jobs and shit. Like, and no shade, but it just, we didn't really know how to like budget our money, let alone have enough. And so he made it happen though. Like, but I wasn't even considering all of the stress that it was for a 19, 20-year-old to have to get it on an apartment, you know, for his expected, working that job. It was like 6 o'clock in the morning. Like it just was a lot. And so when it came to, you know, him wanting to end it, of course, you said that I popped up. I honestly don't even remember the headspace that I was in. I just remember it being so stressful. And one thing about me is I do what I have to do. Like, we can be in arguments, and it's like, bro, I gotta go to sleep because I gotta wake up in the morning. Like, I try not to let certain things affect my livelihood. And so knowing that we had kids, it's like, well, I gotta go to work. And so I'm pretty sure that I probably had the or that's how I was, or my perspective was during that time. But like you said, I came up and it was like, all right, well, I'm here. Like, talk to me. What's going on? And then if Dre like, yo, you gotta leave. It's like, all right, well, whatever. I gotta work. So right, like he's safe. Like, which is probably not the best approach to have.
No, my friends said the same thing when they got the message. Like, yo, we 18, we got class in the morning. They like, yo, it's just Reg, just being Reg, or whatever the case may be. And I'll ask you the same question. And if you don't know, just say you don't know. But is there anything, because I was serious at that point of like not really being here. Is there anything I could have did to set off the red flags of it being like, oh no, he may not be here tomorrow? Because they said they didn't know how to take it serious. They just thought it was just Reg being Reg. He'll be cool in the morning. Maybe he ran out of gas for his car. And like, is there anything? Yeah, because I feel like people would have treated the situation a lot differently if they knew it was how serious it was. But before you answer, to y'all credit, it goes back to the mental health education within the Black community. Nobody know how to treat it. You know what I mean? What could have
right.
been
And
done?
so as far as the severity, like, I don't know. Like, and honestly, I listen to when you speak though. Like, that's why I'm still here. I never leave your side. As much as I have to work in the morning, I just hope that, like, God just give a little bit more will for him to be here when I get off, because I'm gonna still check on him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, again, because, but we don't know. Like, you know what I'm in, because you wear your heart on your sleeve, and it's like you either here or you there. There's no in between with you. I always think that when you're aggressive, or when you're upset, or when you're angry or mad or hurt or sad or depressed, it's always at the top of the list. So
I'm never like a little sad. It's like here. I'm never like a little angry. It's all. That's why more people be seeing me like I'm always in a happy space, and people be like, "Yo, you're always laughing." Because if I feel every other emotion, y'all, nobody's gonna like it.
You don't want to see it. You don't want to see.
Like when I'm depressed, I'm not doing anything. When I'm angry, you better get out the way. And when I'm happy, everybody benefits from it. And so I try to only feel the ones that make the world better and not the world bad.
Yeah, but sometimes you do go through those moments, and I mean, I just hope that I will be able to support you enough to like pull you through those, you know, situations. And sometimes I can't do anything, and that's okay. Like, I had to come to the realization that you can't help him all the time. So when it's time for you to walk away, and I'm okay with that.
No, and that's a fact, because I just put it out about Kanye and talking about what he's going through. And I learned through like my mental health education that you have a responsibility to people, but you're not responsible for people. And so as long as you know you did your part to be responsible to an individual, you don't have to worry about all the ins and outs of everything. For one, you're not a professional to worry about all that. All you can do is support in the way that you can support, and not like, oh, I gotta be hand-holding. And mind you, I learned that for myself too, like trying to save the world almost.
And sometimes you can make the situation worse, and that's not what we want. Like, ultimately, I want, you know, the best for your well-being. And if I'm the one that's causing all of this hurt and pain in this moment, then I have to pull back. That's the only way that you're gonna get better, because I'm the reason that we, you know, you having this problem. Well, me and our unborn child at that time. So,
and this is a picture of the situation. If you guys can see it watching on YouTube, this is the picture of us.
Look how young we were.
Right. I'm
Your dress was like
little. Now I got a whole slew of them back there. So we get past that. We start to find our rhythm as parents. And mind you, again, I'm skipping over a lot, but we'll talk more over time, like the story in between.
About 10 years.
Worth for story. So, and that's can't be told within an hour. But we go through those situations, and we get to the point where you again started to feel like you're missing something. It's like you're battling with quote unquote alcoholism. We don't know for sure. You're battling with that. But you start to feel like you need a sense of something to, like a space, something to fill the space. You can talk more about that, but that's when we decided to start having another baby, or trying for another baby, because you wanted to fill that void. Could you talk more about that?
Yeah, I probably still don't know what that void was, because it wasn't until later down the line that I realized the baby wasn't necessarily what I needed at that time. And so,
no, you do know, because that's why you're in school and all of that stuff.
Well, yeah, like, so basically, during that time, it just was like, I felt like Reggie was my everything, and I was so dependent on him. And like I just stated in the beginning, that like I really didn't have too many friends, or I didn't really want to go out because of the image that I had painted in my past that nobody probably even holds me to, but because I'm so hard on myself that I'm just like tripping. I'm in my own world. But I get to the idea of, well, maybe we should have another child. You know, Zion was like 5 or 6 at the time, and I was like, you know, I don't want to be like have my kids too far apart, so it's just perfect. And plus, I'm needing something, and so we get pregnant with Zak King.
Whoa, pause that right there. So before no, because you went too far. You went too far. So before we get pregnant with Zak King, we went through a bunch of miscarriages. I'll say 1 or 2. You don't count 1. I still count it as a miscarriage, because we were trying it at that point, and then there were incidents that happened. And I'll shout her out. Matter of fact, I'll pull it up while we're on here. But we went through an incident where I was insensitive, to say the least. And it's not funny because I didn't realize how insensitive I was until she explained it to me. Mm-hmm. And so I'm pulling up one of these speeches that I'm doing soon. So I was trying to get that. All right. But I was insensitive and we had a miscarriage. And before we had the miscarriage, I was telling her, like, because of prior failed attempts, I was telling her, don't get too excited because there's a possibility that this baby may not carry full term. So we had one where we was going to the doctor's office. We were, I don't know if it was a heartbeat. It had to be, right? Was it a heartbeat? Okay. We were seeing a heartbeat. We had the ultrasound and everything in between. And we wound up having a miscarriage. And one of the things that I feel guilty of saying, because when she said it back to me, I don't like how it feels, was I told you not to get excited anyway, when she was clearly going through like a traumatic situation. And if you guys want to hear more of the story, I am going to be speaking more in detail because it was a whole thing, but I wanted to share your perspective before I even talk about that.
You see, I skip right over it, right? Like, I mean, I'm not very confrontational. Like, a lot of the things that I go through, which is probably why I gravitated to alcohol, was because I just internalized like a lot of stuff. And so in that moment, while I was experiencing that miscarriage, I remember being in the room alone by myself, cramping. Okay. And so eventually, you know, we got to take it to the bathroom. Like, I already know what's happening. Like, these cramps are too severe for this not to be a miscarriage. So I'm in the bathroom. It's obvious. So then I tell him about it, and I remember him just in the living room watching Gary.
I was about to say, don't put that name. Don't put his name out, because I want that attached to him. I was watching some entrepreneur stuff.
He was watching Gary, and it was like he was just so in tune with that and not me. And I'm like, is this not like, you know, a concern? Is this not like serious? Is this not deep? Because at the moment, I really wanted a baby, and I would expect that, you know, once you agreed upon us having a baby, that you were in that moment with me, and you weren't. And so I kind of just went about my business. Like, I'm not really like one to, you know, argue and just, you know, make you feel a way that you don't feel. But it did. I told him moving forward that I would never,
trust me.
Yeah, like, it's like, you know what, I probably would go through a miscarriage on my own moving forward because of that reaction that he gave me. And that's not something that I feel like I should have to go through alone. But if it was to ever happen again, I don't think that, you know, I want to tell him. It hurts more to know that he's not involved with what's going on with me and his unborn than, you know, to say anything.
No, she's right. And that's something that I gotta wear. Like, it's like when you do something bad, you gotta own it, and it's a part of your history, and you forever gotta, you know, live with it. Like how she does not feel comfortable with talking about alcohol and alcoholism, but she knows that's a part of her past, and that's something that's going to be on her name basically forever. I know that within this relationship, that will be quote unquote a stain that's on my record within our relationship. So all I could do is still try to be supportive in that situation and learn from my mistakes. But I'm not happy that that's how she felt. Again, when she said it, I don't feel comfortable with how it made her feel. You know, because in that period, I remember the exact situation. I remember the scene. I remember everything. I can see me, but I can see where, like, that's where dad or somebody was like, yo, you know, you fucked up, right? Like, you wasn't supposed to, you know, be in that predicament. So again, I wear it, but to share what I wanted to share, let me see if I can get it up. I will be speaking more in depthly on this at the We Are One conference with Sadija Smiley. Shout out to Sadija. I will be speaking on it, and she has a whole organization about this situation in particular, like just talking about survivors of people who lost stillborn and infant loss support, like just helping with grieving individuals. So I'm definitely excited to talk more about it because, again, that's an aspect of my relationship, my life, my, you know, just me in general, of that I really do want to offer out support to other men and young men and people that are becoming fathers, that there are women that who grieve in silence because of that, because of non-emotional support and things like that. So I did want to bring that up, not even to promote the event, or no, I would promote the event because I want people to get the information and the education about that, because there's a bunch of women that just have to deal with that alone. Like they gotta suffer by themselves, and that's an awesome way to support one another. So that's something I'm still learning from. Nobody's perfect. Nobody, gets it all right. You know what I mean? Like you, that's a chink in my armor, basically. Everybody like, oh, Reg, you doing this and you doing that. And it's like, no, I still got some things that I got to work on that I'm ashamed of. It's something similar to her alcoholism is something that I'm still ashamed to speak about, that I won't speak on until it's like further in the past. You know what I mean? And so, still trying to work on me as an individual, especially when it comes in relation to my own relationship. But to transition into the next story, so we have Zak King. If y'all not watching, she started shaking her head because we dread the time that we love him to death. He really is a king in itself. He walks like a little man. He runs the house. His little brother is afraid of. His big brother is afraid of him. We're afraid of him.
Bossy, okay, bossy.
And so we have Zak King, and we start to deal with what we both perceive as, just like with alcoholism, as postpartum depression. Again, but none of us seen therapists or a psychiatrist or anything like that to get diagnosed with anything. Mm-hmm. But we would assume that it's post-traumatic stress disorder. No, that's PTSD. Postpartum depression. You see where my mind is. I'm already. No, I'm looking for the definition as we talk. But can you talk about your experience about that? But I got the definition. So, postpartum depression is depression suffered by a mother. Again, this Dr. Google don't just take it for a basis. Like Google does have the wrong information sometimes, but take it as a basis. Depression suffered by a mother following childbirth, typically arising from the combination of hormonal changes, psychological adjustment to motherhood, and fatigue. And so going off that definition alone, I would assume that you fell on that scale in some type of way. Talk about that. The blue walls.
Right. So I just remember, all right, so once we had Zak King, it was cool. Like, we had our new baby, but eventually, these bills got to get paid. And so he would go and work, and I would find myself home with a baby and a 6-year-old. And I don't think that I internalized, like, what that would look like. And so living it, I felt like stress. Like, I got this one telling me he's hungry and want a snack every 5 minutes, this one crying. And I initially was breastfeeding. So you got him, attached to the boob, him not being present all day because he had to go work. And I just remember being in our apartment, and that apartment had blue walls. And I remember being envious of him because he was able to go out, and although he was working, he still was like out and about. And I'm like, I'm always in here, not to mention that sometimes he would go and play basketball and, just do certain things. And I'm like, well, I want to go. Like, I want to get outside. I want to do all of these things. But I think that you would like tell me, well, you asked for this baby.
No, partially that's partially true. That was one of the things I said, but the other part of that is she was attached to a baby. So she not only she wanted so when Zion was first born, he was everywhere. We barely was with him. Like, and when I say barely with him, we had a lot of support within our family and friends of like being
when you had that first baby, everybody hyped.
Right. And so the second baby, we were on our own. Basically, people was not saying on our own because we made the baby, so we were trying to make it work without the support of family and friends, just trying to alternate our schedules to help out. So when it was the opportunity for her to go out, it was partially she didn't want to leave him, our newborn, around with like just anybody, because we left. Shout out Dre. We left our oldest son with my best friend, and he had no baby in the world. 19, 20, he was 21, and he just had the baby just hanging on his arm while he played the video game. And so we were trying to make sure we were different than we were this time around.
When you know better, you do better.
Exactly.
And that's the situation. And so he's right. I was always in that dilemma of wanting to get out, but then not wanting to leave my child. Mm-hmm. Or, it's like I want to do this, but that's not the best for my kids. Mm-hmm. And so going in between, it caused a lot of stress on me because, again, I just learned about this, the FOMO, the fear of missing out. And I'm like, well, I'm only 26 or 27. Like, I don't do nothing. And you going out, you playing basketball, you're doing these speeches, you're doing all of these things. And I'm here with just kids. Like, is this who I am? So now, like, I'm in an identity crisis at this point. And like, I just had to revamp this whole lifestyle because again, like I said, I thought that I wanted Zak King, and I love my child, don't get me wrong, but I feel like I probably could have waited a few more years for him. He's here now, so, you know, we're definitely adjusting with him being here, but sometimes you think you need stuff and you really don't.
And to her point of me saying she wanted the baby, it's because right around the time, so January 18, 2018 is sketched into my life forever. And the reason why that date is sketched into like my life forever is that was the day I decided that I was going to start making myself happy for the things that I wanted. You know what I mean? So for the entirety of our relationship from 2011 to 2018, I would submit myself to my family. So I had all these things that I wanted to do in life, but I was just kind of following along what the family wanted to do. So, all right, we moving, let's move. I probably wouldn't have moved at 19 if it was up to me, but because she wanted it, I'll figure it out. I'm trying to think of something else, but all the way up to you want a baby, all right, you get a baby. Now, to her point of her saying you wanted it January 18th, and when I decided yo, I'm not about to keep just dragging myself along to whatever they want for me to do. And so January 18th on to up to now, that's when you get my podcast coming out in July, you get my book coming out in November. I started speaking around August, and you get all these things that I've been wanting to do come out and flush and flow together. It's because I always had it in me, but I had dedicated so much time to my family. And once and I think this played a part into her quote unquote, and I say quote unquote because we don't have the diagnosis of postpartum, is the fact that I started to ascend. You know what I mean? Like I started to find my place in where I wanted to be, but she was still finding, like she said, an identity crisis. And so that played a part where I'm meeting with women and men, but I'm meeting with women and it's like, oh, she's cute. Are they talking on the side? And it's like, no, I'm just handling business, which granted, a lot of men say they're handling business and are talking to women. So to her point, she was right. But I was looking at it in a lens of like, yo, I gave y'all 6 years. I'm trying to give me at least a couple.
But because I'm going through my identity crisis and my life didn't really pan out the way that I expected it to, being a new mother, I'm home all the time. Like I basically turned into a housewife basically. And I wanted a new baby, but I don't think that was the lifestyle that I initially wanted. And because at that time, that's what it was, I was like, you know, going through it. And then when he started to, what's the word? Extend. I was like, oh, you know, like you're going out, you know, you're getting all of this love and people are attention, people are adoring what you're doing. Not only that, but you're getting out. And like he said, as far as getting attention from both men and women, it was like predominantly women. And so he would try to be as open as he possibly could, but you know, as a woman, it's like I don't care. She's a woman and she's pretty, and that's the type time that I was on during that January of 2018 timeline. And so I really wasn't trying to hear what he was saying, and so that would cause problems on top of the identity crisis, on top of me being a new mother. It just was like too much, and I think it was even more, like he said, when he started to do his thing, because although I was asking of all of these things, I want to move, I want a baby, I want this, I want that, I don't think I really knew what I wanted. I was just doing shit.
And that's what the problem was, because, and mind you, to this day, this is not an argument, but some things we discussed of like, yo, I gave y'all 6 years of we just doing what you kind of want to do, even though you took that time and you don't even know what you wanted to do. I'm like, but we still gave you that time. I'm taking my time back because I could have been, I always say, she says it to me all the time, I think I could have been a lot further in life if I would have took that time and attention that I was giving to them, which you're supposed to. I'm never going to say you're not supposed to give to your family, but I think I could have got my family a lot further in life if I would have just been the leader and took charge of like, no, we're doing this.
Because he was willing to make a lot of sacrifices that I wasn't willing to make. And I think that I was just more along like the fairy tale world, like, oh well, when you have a baby, you're supposed to be this, or when you have a baby, you're supposed to live on your own, or you're supposed to have two vehicles in a household, and you're supposed, like, it just was just this whole, like, it wasn't our reality in which I was trying to create. And so in turn, I was more so going through it. Well, he was too, which is why he drew the line and was like, listen, I'm not doing this shit no more because it's stressful. You want one thing and it's turning out to be something completely opposite of what you said you wanted. Like, it's not working in our benefit. So I'm done. And once he said that he was done, I think I had like a real reality check. Like,
no, and that's true. And I think that's also why, like, when I say you wanted this baby, it's more so for me to recognize, like, don't go off your path, because I'm so willing to give into, like, you know what, like, let me get the empathy card, or let me try to appease her more. But me appeasing her is not always going to be the best solution to our problems. And so sometimes she's going to be pissed off about some of the decisions I make because I'm trying to do it for the greater good. And mind you, that hurts me still. Like, to this day, we just came off an argument where it still hurts me not to do for my family and do more over here because I know it'll be a greater outcome.
Sometimes I feel bad for Reggie because he really is like everything to me, and he's like my fiance. He's in some form my father figure. Like, he's so many different roles in one. And so I say that because sometimes you do have to pull back, but these may be lessons that I didn't necessarily learn throughout my life. And so when you pull back, I'm able to say, oh, he stopped doing this and I don't like this. So let me, try to figure out how we can work together in order for him to want to come back and do it to where it benefits the both of us, if that makes sense.
No, that's true. And I'll even give y'all the personally. I'll get an exclusive of again, this is the road to how we get to marriage, and the road to how it was. We were supposed to, so in my eyes, I wanted to support Black women recently. And because of the Breonna Taylor situation, I feel like men don't step up enough to help women the way that women step up enough to help men. And so my trajectory of the questioning and the things that I wanted to do to show my support was to bring her on and to talk about some of the things we talked about today or during this conversation, but how men can support women more, and how what I can do more in this relationship, and et cetera, et cetera. But what stopped it was because that we went through an argument where all it got boiled down to was, what do I need you for if you're teaching me these things? And that hurt me to my soul, because it's like, wait, I'm trying to do things and give you things that will help us both succeed if you're doing them. But if you're not, and to her credit, I understand what she was trying to say, but it just, a lot of times her words come up harsher than what she means them to be. And so, but I had to sit with that of like, what do I need you for? Because it made me start to press my reality of like, well, why am I doing all of these things for if she feels that way? Again, granted, she didn't necessarily feel the words that she said, but the way that she felt, it was a different conversation that needed to be had. And the reason why I share that with y'all, because it goes back to her point of, for one, if y'all don't see me posting my relationship, or if y'all see some posts go away, it's because we're probably angry. We passed that phase of me deleting everything. I just won't post nothing for a long time. And so I share that because I do want it to help some couples out there of the fact that communication is always key. Like, communication will always be key.
Definitely. I'm currently working on, shout out to Judge Toller, because she be teaching me a lot. I stay watching divorce court, and not in, a sense of getting a divorce, but I just love how she's unbiased, and I just love how she's able to get the viewpoint from each party and, give them information on behalf of what will work both ways for both of them. And so I don't even know why I said that.
No, that was the lessons of why we got to that.
Yeah, like, basically in regards to communication, a lot of the times I don't mean to say
you have an emotion and you have a feeling,
right?
And then you try to articulate that emotion and that feeling, but it doesn't come out the way. And
honestly, I don't know enough vocabulary words to be able to articulate myself in a way to where I say what I mean.
I don't want to say you don't know it enough, because I just learned about the feelings chart, which we probably need to hang up for the kids, where you can press a word or point to a word to describe how you're feeling. And I don't think it's not that you don't know enough words. It's more of what word describes exactly how I'm feeling. Right. Because a lot of things could just come off as angry, where it's not really anger, it's hurt. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so I want to actually get more into, I think, to your credit, you do know what you're trying to say. You just don't have the right word to communicate it. Right. And words have meaning.
Right. So I need to be able to know like the word in which I'm trying to say, so that way it doesn't come off, because I can say something and not mean it, but because I said it, now it's like, oh, you can't take it back. Mm-hmm. And so now it's like, no, that's not what I was trying to say, but I said it. So now we just got to move forward the best way we can in this moment. Mm-hmm. And it ain't always pretty.
No, it is not. So to end it up, for one, we got the air off and it's getting hot. So, if y'all see us keep drinking water. To end it off, again, this is the road to Howard. What took us so long in your perspective? What other questions I got? What took us so long? What are you looking for into marriage? And why shouldn't couples listen to their family and friends?
Dang, why you ain't ask me one at a time?
Oh, all right. So, go answer the first one. What took us so long? I'll exit that.
I just think life events took us so long. I think that we had like a lot of growing to do. I know that Reggie always said like my first marriage is going to be my last marriage, and I stand by that as well. Like I'm not into just getting married because we've been together for so many years, and it's not the right thing to do. So I just think one, life events, the having a baby, the working out like our personalities, the getting in an accident, then having another baby, then realizing what we actually want out of life. Like it just took a little individually and together. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just took we just had some things that we need to do. But now 10 years later.
No, but I think that's perfect, the 10 years, because now we know what we get. You know what I mean? Like if you do it in 5 or 3, some people show the representatives of themselves, and you may not always get the person you're about to marry. So that way, when like next year or 2 years down the line, Reg is still gonna be Reg when we're in a relationship as marriage, as far as where I've been for the last 10 years. So you kind of got a real idea of the individual. And so I think to your point is more so 10 years took time to learn each other.
Right.
And unlearn each other, because I'm still learning new things every day. She was in a little step squad before.
Shut up.
I didn't know. And then said she was getting her, what's that movie called? You ain't gonna help me.
Nope. I don't
not
know
B2K. Nick Cannon, that drum line on, she was getting it in. Like,
I don't know what you're talking about.
You think you can serve? Or what is that shit? You got served. God damn it. Yeah,
that's what you get for coming up with jokes and stuff.
But I'm learning about her all the time. That's different stuff that I didn't.
It definitely is a never-ending process in regards to knowing each other and learning each other. But I think that we're definitely in a space of we know like what we're going to get. Like it'll change, throughout, but for the most part, we're very comfortable with one another. And I think that that's like the level we needed to get to in order to make it,
without they call it on other podcasts on ET. Shout out to ET podcast. They call it the insurance bucket, where you gotta pay money because you're talking about people. So without putting money into the insurance bucket, why shouldn't we couples that's trying to make their relationship work listen to family and friends?
Because every relationship is different, and without putting in the insurance, I just feel like you shouldn't listen to family and friends, because sometimes they just don't know what's best for you or your relationship. And so, just keeping it as simple as possible. Like, people don't know what's best for you. Like, we know what's best for us. So you can take heed to what they say, but I don't think that you should apply everything. If it makes sense, sure, go with it. But if it don't, throw it in the trash. And
if you feel like basically I took from that, if you feel like it resonates with you, because a lot of the time, a lot of people talk, even outside of relationship personally, when it's stuff that resonates with you and you feel like it's something you want to incorporate, then I think that was something you should do. Like, for example, I know one of our family members said, like, yo, you got to always please your man. So even if you just got to lie there, just give it to him. And it's like, that's not something, I didn't even want that. Regardless of if she like, all right, I'm going to just do it or not. I want it to be an interaction. Like that feels like a charge right there. Like, so you can go to jail for doing something.
And that's what I mean by like people putting their personal experiences and preferences on you. That's why it's beneficial for you to, just have your own mind. And again, you can take into consideration what they're saying to you, but ultimately it's coming from a personal root or perspective. So you shouldn't, just because that's what we were doing in the beginning. We were kept listening to our families, and this is why, you know, we had multiple suicide attempts, and, you know, I'm struggling, you know, being drinking and just all kinds of stuff, just listening to everybody and everybody's opinion. It wasn't until we was like, you know what?
Cut ties.
Right. Like, thank you for that information, but I'm gonna go ahead and move over here to where, you know, things started to come together in our household. Like, we couldn't be happier.
And it wasn't until we started going with this picture where we realizing it was just us and the lifestyle we wanted to create that we had to start making decisions for us as a unit.
Because that's if it was for other people, we'd have been married a long time ago,
exactly,
and would have been arguing and fighting, and
horrible.
It just would have been bad. Like, it would have been really, really bad. But with us being able to take our time, because, you know, we still get those comments like about time, or like, yo, when you gonna get married and all that little other stuff. I'd be really wanting to say mind your business, because what is it to you? Exactly. Like, if you're not gonna pay for our wedding, or if it doesn't, you know, satisfy you in any type of way, why does it matter? Like, just appreciate the fact that we've been going on for 10 years, like raising our kids together, and, you know, like all of the positive things. And us not being married is not necessarily a negative, but like, you're killing me. Like, leave me alone.
And lastly, what I would end off with is, what do you expect moving forward? We're going into our 30s, going into probably moving into our own little house. We're in an apartment now, of course, but just what do you expect as the Howards now? Instead of being two individuals coming to different families, what do you expect as the Howards now? We have a full family unit with two sons, the house, and probably a dog that I'm not going to walk, because I told you I don't want to punk ass dog.
Here we go. I don't expect nothing. Like, we, you know, we're good. Like, I already feel like his wife. Like, I already feel like a union and a partnership. I already feel like, you know, we understand each other and we respect each other. So, you know, being married is just the icing on the cake. It's now I finally get to change my last name to everybody else that's living in my house. Like, other than that, it's really no difference. Like,
listen, and on that note, subscribe, follow, look out. I'm going to try to drop, you know, some. I want to drop content regarding our relationship up from the year from July 15th all the way till July 2008. What's this? 20? We're into 2020. July 15th, 2020, up to July 15th, 2021. I want to drop some relationship things and stuff. It may be a podcast. It may be something where we kind of chronicleize. I can't get that word again. I started off. I can't find the word. You're right. You got to find it. We put a timeline on our relationship. So, again, subscribe to the podcast, follow, and remember that this platform has never been about a replacement to therapy. It's an alternative place where people share therapeutic stories. Thank you for listening.
Peace.